Ever wondered if your advertising dollar is really working for you? If your ad would have been here, you and more than 4 million people would be listening to it right now. Contact ads at xzoneradiotv.com.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
When the midnight hour's calling and the world has gone to sleep, there's a voice across the darkness, digging mysteries buried deep. From UFOs to hauntings, ancient secrets carved in stone, there's only one place waiting. Welcome to the X Zone. From coast to coast, we're broadcasting across the USA and Canada too. With truth seekers and believers, bringing hidden stories through. Welcome to the X Zone, where the strange becomes the real. From ghosts and alien visitors to mysteries we can feel. The biggest names are joining us, sharing secrets still unknown. With Rob McConnell leading you into the X Zone.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. For the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. The X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight right here on the CanCom Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ AM. And you can listen to CFAJ no matter where you are in southwestern Ontario just by tuning your car radio to 1220 AM, or they also stream us around the world at classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. Well, from the world of the unexplained mysteries, spiritual awakening, consciousness exploration, and the search for the truth hidden just beyond the veil of reality, this hour's guest has dedicated his work to examining the deeper questions of existence of humanity's connection to the unknown. Joining us this hour is author, researcher, and explorer of consciousness, Barry MARKOVSKY. Through his writings, research, and personal journey, Barry challenges conventional thinking while encouraging people to open their minds to the mysteries surrounding us each and every day. We'll be discussing spirituality, higher consciousness, unexplained phenomena, humanity's evolving awareness, and the eternal question: are we far more connected to the universe than we realize? His official website is www.bmarkovsky.com, and that's BMARKOVSKY.com. So lock your doors, dim the lights, and prepare to journey beyond the boundaries of the ordinary as realities are strange, unknown, and yet sometimes familiar here in the X Zone. Joining me now is Barry MARKOVSKY. And Barry, welcome to the X Zone.
Thanks, Rob. I wish I had a theme song as good as yours.
Oh, geez. Well, thanks very much. Barry, what inspired you? Nobody's ever said that before, so I don't know how to answer it. What first inspired your journey into exploring the unknown?
Well, I don't know what the very first thing is, but I grew up, as a child, fascinated by magic and stories of monsters and ghosts and all kinds of weird things that kids enjoy. Somewhere along the way, I started to fall in love with science, probably because I was a child of the 60s and all the space exploration was happening, and science was very much at the forefront of national consciousness then. And I think it just went from there. I read more in high school. I got into science in college and graduate school. So, it's a long history. It goes back to the early days of my childhood.
Barry, was there a specific event or personal experience that changed the direction of your life?
Of my life, I would say that I've had several experiences academically that changed my orientation toward understanding what generally are considered to be weird phenomena, particularly in grad school, where really for the first time I was exposed to some philosophy of science, issues about what makes a field scientific or not scientific. I won't bore you with a lot of details, but I mean, one of the really common cases for analysis is astrology, which at least a third to 40% of our country has some belief in, and it's often held up as an example of a pseudoscience because it really doesn't operate as a science. It isn't based on the kind of evidence that would pass muster scientifically. And yet it's very popular. And as a social scientist, I consider myself a social psychologist. I'm fascinated by why people believe in things, regardless of, I'm interested in whether they're true or not, but regardless of their truth, we often have a large segment of society believing something that just isn't very well supported.
One of my part-time jobs when I was young was working in a newspaper stand. And it was very interesting that the newspaper stand was located near a major train station in Montreal. And all the commuters would get off the train, they'd come running to the newspaper shop. And I'd be amazed at how many people would just pick up a copy of the local paper, turn to the horoscopes, close the paper, and get off to work.
Right. And most people don't realize that something like astrology, which makes some pretty specific claims, is testable and has been tested quite often, quite a number of times. Some of the tests are not well conducted. Some of them are superbly conducted. And as it turns out, I hate to disappoint too many people, but the better the quality of the test that's performed, the less the astrological effect, the less validity there is to the astrological claim. And I'm not saying that to take the fun away, because I know it is a lot of fun for people. I look at my horoscope.
Yeah.
But do I, make relationship decisions based on it? No. Or investment decisions? I don't think that would be a good idea. But things can be fun without necessarily guiding our lives by them.
When it comes to the horoscopes, it's amazing how old astrology really is, the number of different branches of astrology there are, and how the ancients who came up with astrology actually knew the placement and the mathematics behind the planets. It just blows the mind away if you really understand the complexity of astrology. And I'm sure modern day computers and astrology programs have made it a lot easier for a number of astrologers out there. But it still blows my mind. How in the name of heavens did the ancients know where all these planets were, and how could they see them all? Like, come on, guys.
Astrology developed kind of slowly. Its origins, which probably go back 2,500, 3,000 years, were very simple and simplistic. A star gets occluded by the moon, for instance, or a single heavenly object is oriented in a particular way toward another object, and only gradually over centuries did it develop as more heavenly objects became recognized. You could see 4 planets with your naked eyes, and later with the advent of telescopes, more details and more calculations could be performed. But one thing that most people don't realize about astrology is there are multiple astrologies around the world. different systems developed by different cultures, which make mutually contradictory claims. And they also interpret constellations differently as well, depending on the cultural orientation, the culturally meaningful objects. So it's hard to put a lot of credence into them when they don't agree. Now, if different cultures came up with different astrological systems and they came up with mutually supportive claims, that would be something. But it hasn't really worked out that way.
I was a young man in the age where one of the greatest pickup lines in the world was, "Hi, my name is Rob. I'm a Taurus. What's your sign?" Yeah.
Yeah. And then you say, well, guess,
Yeah.
And within the first 5 or 6 guesses, they usually get it right.
They only have 12 to pick from.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. How would you describe your core field of research and expertise to someone hearing about your work for the first time?
Well, I really haven't been writing much or for very long about these popular topics. I'm retired now, but my long research career really dealt with social influence, social perception, fairly esoteric topics within sociology and social psychology. So, we're not going to get into that stuff today, even though that heavily influenced my orientation toward paranormal claims. So, I'm very interested in the truth of paranormal claims, and I have for decades read a lot about the investigations that have been performed. But I'm equally interested in the social factors, the cultural factors, the perceptual factors of belief. And this is something that really, even if you read the skeptical literature, you don't read that much about social influences on perception, social influences on beliefs, how your family affects your perceptions and beliefs. You can use religious beliefs as an example, where we don't usually demand evidence for religious beliefs, but those beliefs don't come out of nowhere. They generally come from our authority figures, our parents, our siblings, our cousins, and so on. And that's not really recognized as a major source of other kinds of beliefs in supernatural and paranormal.
Sure. Barry, stand by. You and I have to take our first break for this hour. And Exonation, if you'd like to find out more about my guest this hour, Barry Markovsky, it's www.BMarkovsky.com. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, and Barry and I will be back on the other side of this break as we continue from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the CanCom Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, streaming us at classic1220.ca.
There's a voice across the darkness, digging mysteries buried deep. From UFOs to hauntings, ancient secrets carved in stone. There's only one place waiting. Welcome to the X Zone. From coast to coast, we're broadcasting across the USA and Canada too. With truth seekers and believers, bringing hidden stories through. July 47 in the desert heat, a rancher found strange wreckage scattered at his feet. Silver like no metal anybody knew, whispers in the darkness said, could it all be true? From the skies above old New Mexico, something crashed where the cold winds blow. Roswell nights still call our name, and the world has never been the same. Roswell.
And welcome back, everyone. Barry Markovsky is our special guest. And Barry, in your opinion, why are more people today becoming interested in spirituality and metaphysical subjects?
Is that true? More people than in the past? I'm not sure about
Yeah,
that,
according to all the
but
surveys that
there's always
according to all the surveys
okay.
that we've read, yeah.
I buy it. There's always been just in religious
Hmm.
spirituality. We've had a pretty steady 90+% believers, and as far as surveys of paranormal beliefs, that's usually up around 92% as well. Uh, it actually varies over time with respect to the paranormal stuff. And that's to be expected. It varies according to what's popular in the media. Uh, it varies according to instability in society. In a time like we're living in now, where there's a great deal of uncertainty and instability surrounding us all the time in all the media, uh, we look toward spiritual beliefs and uh, spirituality generally for some kind of consistency and comfort and predictability. And I think it kind of comes in waves over longer periods of time. That's my sociological lens that I'm looking through. But yeah, you're probably right that over recent history, 5, 10 years, there's
Hmm.
been an upswing.
How do the events in Washington affect sociology in general?
I think I'm having some audio problems.
Uh,
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. We were.
Okay.
Is it better now?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
We
okay.
had some dropping out there for some reason.
All right. How do the effects of what is occurring in Washington have beyond the noticeable effects on sociology that we see on a daily basis? Like we're in an era now where the news cycle is 724, 365 on every platform that you can imagine. With this influx, with this increase in media awareness, what kind of effect is this having on society?
Yeah, it definitely creates a kind of collective anxiety. And along with collective anxiety, we've seen throughout history, there usually are social responses to
Hmm.
that. And it could be an upswing in xenophobia, fear of the other and hatred of the other. It could be an upswing in spirituality and spiritual beliefs, as you mentioned before. And it could be an increase in conspiracy theorizing, which we're certainly uh, awash in
Yeah,
these days, it seems.
we certainly are. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about your work?
Well, I think I get lumped in with people who are dismissively skeptical. I'm every chapter in the book that I published recently does debunk or at least raise questions about various kinds of paranormal, supernatural, and weird claims,
Hmm.
including a chapter on conspiracy theories. And so before people read that, they just assume I'm going to be dismissive of anything that's non-mainstream. That I'm along with other scientists, I'm accused of acting as though I know everything, being condescending. I advocate a pretty different approach, which is to be willing to suspend judgment when you don't really have solid evidence. And I also, at the same time, advocate for very high standards of evidence before submitting to a belief.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's pretty much a credo of science. You look for the strong evidence, but if you don't have it, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, it's not warranted to jump to a conclusion one way or the other. You just have to sit with uncertainty and be willing to be uncertain.
What are
So
some?
when I talk about
Mhm.
astrology,
Right.
that's low-hanging fruit for a skeptic. It's just been so thoroughly debunked in every way. But when we talk about ESP or hauntings or alien visitors, there's still, for me, the door is cracked open a little bit, and there is the possibility of some truth. Not usually what's portrayed in media as truth, but a better standard of evidence that we just haven't achieved yet. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No problem. In your book, what are some of the weird claims that you made reference to?
Well, one of them was a haunting in a vape shop that was in the city I was living in. I was contacted by a documentary filmmaker who the owner of the shop had hired to sort of film and document what was the weird things that were going on there. And the filmmaker said he wouldn't do it unless he had at least one skeptical voice in the film. So with the cooperation of the shop owner, they both sent me a whole bunch of surveillance videos. And I had never investigated hauntings before, but I'd read dozens and dozens of them. And I knew what to look for in these videos. None of them were, like an apparition that was making funny sounds and floating across the room. But we did see a lot of the standard kinds of things you see on any YouTube video about hauntings: orbs and wispy lights moving through the rooms and strange sounds in the background. But the closer I looked at these, the more obvious it was really the shop owner not really knowing the characteristics of his surveillance equipment, not having any kind of soundproofing that prevented voices from outside the walls from penetrating and being recorded. There are just lots of problems. He was kind of going by the ghost investigation TV shows that he has seen, and they're just notoriously poor in their methodology. So it was a pretty easy case, but that's one example of one that I really dug into.
Well, the TV productions are there to create viewers, and anybody who's ever done any serious investigating into the paranormal knows that you just can't. There's not enough time in any given TV show to play the entire footage to retain an audience. So, yes, they use magic, and anybody who watches these shows who takes it for verbatim and the God's truth, well, you're in for a rude awakening when the world of reality smacks you right between the eyes. What about EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena?
Unfortunately, we had some of those as well, where they would turn up the recording equipment and get some sounds that seemed inexplicable. There's a really interesting perceptual phenomenon associated with these, and I've not seen any that really didn't fall into this trap, which is once you're cued as to what you're supposed to hear in the EVP, which is almost always not very clear. Once you're cued and your expectations are set up of what you're supposed to hear, you hear it. If you're not cued and you're just asked, what did that sound say? What words did you hear there? There's usually a lot of disagreement about it. And then what is the source of the sound is a whole other important question, and that's usually not known. It's often, for competent investigators, they're much more careful to ensure that sounds from outside where the microphone is recording are also recorded. So, you have multiple recording devices. You can triangulate to the source of the EV or the microphone picking up the EVP, and then say, well, that was actually a pedestrian walking on the sidewalk outside the building or something like that. And I've seen so many cases of EVPs being taken seriously. Now, I haven't seen all the evidence, of course, and there's always going to be evidence that I've missed, but I have yet to see any EVP that really comes close. They can send shivers up my spine, but only when I'm led to the same expectations and perceptions as other viewers are. And I can participate in the creepiness of it. But otherwise, if you see a demonstration of EVP where you're not cued in advance what you can expect to hear, you won't hear it. There won't be agreement over the words that were said. And often those expectations are set up with a cool story or a legend that's associated with the location, and it just adds to the to the interest and the creepiness of it.
Just like any ghost tour operator, they set up the scenario about what has happened, what has been seen, the history of the building. And for those who want to see and those who want to hear, that's exactly what happens. But if you go in there with an open mind, not knowing any of the story, the history, my gosh, if I had a dime for every ghost tour I've been on when I have heard nothing or seen nothing, I wouldn't have to work as many hours as I do. But, I go into these places and some of the operators, so what do you think? What did you hear? What did you see? Nothing. But I'm
You're just a bad customer.
Yeah, I am. And I want to believe. I really do want to believe, but I want to see the evidence. I want to know the facts. I want to know that what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing is real. And that's where I kind of differ from a lot of folks out there who've been doing the same job that I've been doing for 35 years. You and I have to take our break at the bottom of the hour. Barry, please stand by. And XO Nation, if you'd like to contact Barry, once again, his website is www.bmarkovsky.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Barry and I will continue very shortly after this very brief message from our fine people that sponsor this show. And make sure that you can listen to me Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight, right here on the CanCom Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM. Don't go away.
July 47 in the desert heat, a rancher found strange wreckage scattered at his feet. Silver like no metal anybody knew, whispers in the darkness said. They say Mandela died in prison back in 1983. Yet history books keep telling us he lived to set men free. How could millions all remember a world that never was? That single strange collective memory started all the buzz. Now people talk of timelines, worlds colliding in the night, tiny cracks in human memory or dimensions out of sight. From children's books to movie lines and logos rearranged, something in the fabric feels familiar yet has changed. We're shifting through the cracks tonight, searching for what's real, trying to understand the things our memories still feel. Are we living parallel lives in worlds just out of phase? Or is the human mind rewriting yesterday's old days?
Barry, what do you believe is the greatest mystery facing humanity today?
Well, if you look at the cutting edge of sciences, I think that's where it lies. For physical sciences, the origins of the universe may always remain a mystery. Although it seems that just in my lifetime, we've come closer and closer to figuring things out that a century ago we had no clue about. And in the social sciences, where I've cut my teeth. The understanding how complex systems work is something that's kind of at the frontier. In my case, complex systems being like societies, where you have lots and lots and lots of individual agents, and through some kind of magic, almost magical process, what emerges out of that are different kinds of social orders. And we don't, we have no more full understanding of that process than we do of how consciousness emerges from neurons. But, our models, our methods are, I think, very exciting, getting better and getting us closer to truth.
How can the work that you do in research on society help John Q. Public?
Oh, yeah, we could take an hour on that topic, I think. I've studied a lot of different phenomena through my career. For instance, in graduate school, my doctoral research was on fairness perceptions, how it is that we take elements of a situation that we're in and arrive at a conclusion about fairness. And at the same time, I also did work showing how those conclusions can be so biased by irrelevant information. And understanding how biases and misperceptions play into our beliefs, I think, is hugely important. And I didn't really find till at least a decade later from that work that this applies pretty well to popular beliefs in paranormal claims, which already kind of interested me. But other kinds of things that I've studied are how people influence one another, how we exert power or status or other kinds of impulses over one another. And that also is a kind of unseen phenomenon. We're often not aware that somebody 2 steps away from us in a social network is influencing how we act and how we think. And tracing out those kinds of influences is really exciting to me. I want to go back to something you said before the break. I just wanted to agree with you about, you said you want to believe in some of these things. And I'm so with you on that. That was part of my early motivation. But also, as you said, I want to hold those claims that I'm thinking about to a high standard of evidence. And that's why for most of them, the jury is still out on things that we just don't have very good evidence for. And that's been a motivation in my more conventional research as well. I would like to unlock the mysteries of how societies piece themselves together and persist through time and sometimes collapse.
It amazes me how many people believe in Bigfoot, unsolved mysteries, UFOs, extraterrestrial abductions, and all the topics that we talk here in the X Zone that are interesting to our listeners. And a great number of these listeners have never had an experience, but based on the stories that they hear and the alleged witness testimonies of guests, they become hard, fast believers. To me, that has always been one of the greatest mysteries that I've ever come across. Like, why do you believe in something that is told to you that you have no proof or evidence really happened, and yet you're willing to say, oh my God, I believe aliens are here and are abducting people, or oh my God, disclosure is right around the corner? As a social scientist, what do you take from this?
That's exactly the target of a lot of my work, is trying to get at what tips a person over from disbelief to belief or the other direction. And often it is, it's always a combination of factors, and there's not there's not one simple factor that you can identify that makes a difference between belief and disbelief. But just imagine yourself, and you grew up in a particular context at a particular time. All you have to do is look across the border or across the ocean to another culture where maybe they agree on many points, but they're going to disagree strongly on a lot of points as well, because they were brought up within a particular context and in a particular culture. And those influences are profound, and we tend not to think about them. We tend to think that they're just wrong, and dismiss beliefs of people who aren't like us or have a different nationality. And what that should do is clue us in that, wait, they're just as vehement in their beliefs. They believe what they believe just as strongly as I do. Maybe my beliefs were also socially constructed in a similar way. And I think that takes us a long way toward being more open-minded. And one of the things I wanted to be sure to mention was doing your own research isn't necessarily a fruitful endeavor. I'm sure you know this, that going down a Google rabbit hole and listening to the arguments between proponents and skeptics on some issue probably won't get you too far. What you need is a position to work from. And science is the best one we know as far as critical thinking and learning to understand what differentiates good evidence from bad evidence. But that takes an investment. It's understanding research methods, understanding logic, understanding even to some extent statistics are all necessary tools for digging in a deep way in a lot of different claims. So you couldn't really investigate astrology if you didn't know anything about statistics. It's not enough to just find a series of horoscopes that confirm your belief in it. That's subjective validation. That's confirmation bias. Not a good scientific investigation. So we really need, if we want to objectively understand so many of these kinds of claims, we need a place to stand that prevents us from fooling ourselves. And Neil deGrasse Tyson had a great quote along those lines: "Science exists to help prevent us from believing something is true if it isn't, or believing something isn't true if it is." And I definitely subscribe to that.
And yet, if you look, across the oceans to any continent on this planet, when it comes to UFOs, if it comes to Bigfoot, if it comes to hauntings or any other aspect of the paranormal, everybody agrees on them. And yet, cross the ocean to other places and there's a different religion. It seems that the paranormal is so believable because, number one, you can't prove it 9 times out of 10. So where's the argument? How can you dispute something that can't be proven? And yet the fact that it can't be proven is the reason why people believe it.
Yeah, I made a note before we started today to mention secrecy. There are these different stories of different characters, and the idea that there's a hidden agenda or a hidden solution or something going on behind the curtain that we don't have access to is fantastic fuel for this kind of storytelling. And I would dispute a little bit something that you're saying, that we do have beliefs across cultures in UFOs and flying objects and things like that, unidentified flying objects. But they do vary culturally, which is really interesting. So if you look at different cultures' depictions of gods that have come down from the sky or aliens that have come down from spaceships or what have you, again, they kind of incorporate the cultural elements that are of the time and the place where
Exactly.
those depictions originated.
Oh, I agree that in the past there are certainly cultural differences when it comes to UFOs and the stories about the ancient gods and the possibility that the ancient gods had some play in our evolution. I'm talking about since, let's say, the 1940s. When it comes to UFOs, when it comes to hauntings, when it comes to Bigfoot, alien abductions, everything is the same across the board. There seems to be something that binds whatever is said when it comes to UFOs and aliens that people believe in, whether you're in Brazil, whether you're in Mexico, whether you're in Ireland, whether you're in Canada or the United States. Those who believe in the same thing, the same shape. Where the aliens are from. You and I have to take a break. This is just mind-boggling. Why belief? In my opinion, belief is the strongest power in the universe. And if you believe in something strong enough, no matter hell or high water, you're not going to change your opinion. We'll be back as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone with our guest this hour, Barry MARKOVSKY. Wow. Are you a believer or are you a skeptic? Send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone on the CanCom Broadcast Network and streaming us on classic1220.ca. Don't go away.
To set men free, how could millions all remember a world that never was, that single strange collective memory? Of dragons and candlelight, two dreamers dance through the endless night. Oberon called to the ancient skies, morning glory saw truth in their eyes. From the forest deep to the ocean foam, they built a world and they made it home, with books of magic and hearts untamed, changing the world in the old God's name. Oh, Oberon, wizard of the silver flame, morning glory calling nature's sacred name. Through the mists of Avalon they ride, with the unicorn spirit by their side.
Barry MARKOVSKY is my special guest this hour. And Barry, we did an experiment years ago. I was on the corner of, let me see, it was Yonge and Bay Street, I believe. No, Yonge and Queen. No, I forget the cross street anyway. Downtown Toronto. And I was on a friend's radio show. And all I had to do was go down to the corner of the street and look up. Not say a word, just stand there and look up. And within minutes, there was a crowd gathered around me, all looking up, and they saw what I was looking at, and I was absolutely looking at nothing. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about society?
Yeah, that's a wonderful little social experiment. Not very rigorous or scientific, but it's telling, isn't it? That you can socially influence people just by one simple little gesture.
Yeah,
and that's really fun. That's wonderful. I wanted to amplify something and address what you were saying before the break. I've been emphasizing cultural differences and how we're brought to different beliefs depending on our contexts and where we're raised. But when you mentioned that there are commonalities across the world and across cultures, I agree with that too. And part of the reason for that, I would speculate, is that we have a lot in common with people around the world. Our perceptual apparatus, our tendency to be influenced by people around us. These are all constants, just part of being human. And we're not conscious of a lot of what how we're processing information in general. And we're not conscious of the errors that we make, and we're not conscious of the influences that we receive and how those shape our beliefs. This is all happening subconsciously or unconsciously. And I think that's also important to keep in mind as we try to understand phenomena that may or may not be widely held, or beliefs about phenomena that may or may not be widely held. So I just wanted to get that in, since it was something I was a little baffled by when you brought it up before.
In today's world of social media and misinformation, Barry, how do you think people should separate truth from fantasy?
I think starting from a skeptical standpoint is always good. Immediately, don't accept something because it resonates with you, because your gut is telling you that it's correct, especially if it's of some importance in your life, or to other people in your life. Be careful, be thoughtful, be deliberate. Do your homework on it. Find out who the experts are, and try to distinguish legitimate experts from non-legitimate experts. One of the things I often mention in talks is just how easy it is to fool people into believing that you have some kind of expertise that you don't actually have. All you need is a few scientific sounding words, and there you have it. People know how to tell stories very compellingly. I talk about this in the book as well, the communication of some of these claims. It goes through a process of what the communication specialists call sharpening and leveling. So when we retell a story, watch out for places where the storyteller may be sharpening some of the facts and amplifying them in a way that distorts them or exaggerates them. And watch out for leveling, where they're actually flattening or eliminating crucial information that may have provided a very simple explanation for the mystery that's being conveyed.
So as a social scientist, Barry, why do you think humanity has always been fascinated by the unknown?
I think part of it is control. That life is scary, and the less you know, the scarier it is. To be able to have a sense, whether it's valid or not, that we have some control, that there is some predictability, that's a very powerful feeling. And we do tend to latch on to claims and authorities, again, whether legitimate or not, that reduce that anxiety for us, that make us feel connected, that make us feel powerful and knowledgeable. So I think that actually accounts for a lot of it.
During your work as a social scientist, again, have you ever uncovered information that genuinely has frightened you, that has just blown you away?
Yeah. I can remember the moment that I read an article by the transcendental meditation researchers. I was at University of Iowa at the time, and they were down the road at Maharishi International University, and they published a study that claimed that when they get a sufficient number of people together practicing transcendental meditation, that it causes all kinds of things to happen simultaneously out in the society. All positive things. Auto fatalities go down, domestic fires go down, and nationally, presidential presidential performance polls go more positive, and all kinds of positive things. And they showed a graph that had a composite index of a number of these social indicators correlating with the number of people they had meditating each day over a 60-day period. And boy, that made the hairs on my neck stand up. That was so eerie. And it really wasn't until a colleague and I started digging into this that we understood what was really going on, which was essentially they were using some very fancy, complicated statistics and manipulating them. Maybe not even consciously, but they were including certain variables as controls and omitting other variables. And in the end, I tried to get their data from them so that I could reproduce it, and they wouldn't share it. So that's a pretty big red flag right there.
Sure is.
But I still remember that moment when I learned about it. And, I was kind of glad that I had the opportunity to work with somebody and dig into that and figure out what was really going on.
What questions, in your opinion, should researchers today be asking that they're not?
Researchers in any particular field?
Well, let's take researchers into social science, for example. What questions should they be asking that they're not?
That's a tough one. Part of the reason it's a tough question is because unlike some of the physical sciences, biological sciences, there aren't really a set of core issues within social sciences. You have thousands of people studying thousands of things, and part of that's facilitated by society being a very complex system and human behavior being very complex. So I was frustrated in the latter half of my career by the lack of interest in understanding complex systems as systems. That work was being done in other fields, in biological systems and cosmological systems, but so few people are interested in doing it in social systems. And I thought it was a model and an approach that would have helped us a great deal to understand how different qualities that we see in societies emerge out of seemingly nothing. Why do trends happen? Why do pop cultural phenomena happen the way they do? And I think answers to those kinds of questions lie in understanding systems better.
The time has come, Barry, when we're nearly over for this hour. I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. My final question for you is, if you could uncover the answer to one universal mystery, what would it be?
Yeah, it would definitely be, is there intelligent life elsewhere in the universe? Partly because I believe, I would bet my life that there is, but I would also bet my life that we haven't had the evidence yet. Because I have high standards, a fuzzy image of a UFO on a video, that doesn't convince me. But,
me.
That's what I'd like to know.
I agree with you. Do you remember the old Wendy's commercial where you had this little old lady saying, "Where's the beef?"
Sure.
My question is, to everybody out there, where's the beef or the evidence of the claim that you're making? Everybody talks about dead aliens. Nobody's really seen one. Everybody talks about UFOs. That all-inclusive proof of UFO existence doesn't exist. Everybody talks about the crash of Roswell. If there was all this debris scattered all over Brazel's farm, you couldn't tell me that nobody snuck a little piece, put it in their pocket? Come on. Show me the proof. Barry, thanks so much for joining us. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to the next time you join us back here in the X Zone. It's been a great hour.
Thanks, Rob. This was really fun. Thank you.
Take care, sir. All right, X Zone Nation, if you'd like to find out more about my guest this hour, Barry Markovsky, visit his website, www.bmarkovsky.com. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe, dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the CanCom Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, streaming us around the world on classic1220.ca.
Of dragons and candlelight, two dreamers dance through the end.